set your model apart, and it's kind of just giving it the random scrapes and dings, kind of giving the car a little bit of character. So we're going to go ahead and just name out these two little paints. We're using the Model Master Acrylic Burnt Sienna for kind of the rusty scrapes. You can kind of see it when I threw it up on the camera. And the other one I'm using, which I didn't really call out, was a Full Cart 904 Lemonade, which it's just one of those cheap 49-cent acrylic paints. And I mean, this thing is older than me. It's 25 years old and it's still kicking. So we're gonna go ahead and just start with the burnt sienna. We're just kind of going over the roof of that roof of the car. We're kind of giving the scrapes and the dings. We're kind of giving it the heavy rust spots, and we're just giving it kind of the blotches where it'll be heavy, and then we can go ahead with the powders and kind of smooth everything out, kind of give it a nice transient between the car body and the rust spot. So some other things that we're going to go ahead and do is just the random scrapes and dings. If we're looking at the prototype picture once again, you can kind of see on the door how it has a pretty gnarly gash down the side of it. And that's something that you'll find pretty much on every boxcar. There'll be nice horizontal gashes along where the door opens up. And that's one of the things that you really want to, and that's really one of the things you want to watch out for. Because those should really be the only horizontal scratches you have on a boxcar. There's not going to be a lot of horizontal scratches at the top or the bottom. It's just really where that door is. And so the rest of your scratches kind of want to be pretty random. You can kind of see right there where I'm just kind of, you know, putting a dot. Because a dot on an HO scale freight car, you know, it's a spec, but on a real car that's like a 6-inch heavy gash. So you really just want to watch out. You want to try and avoid things like symmetry. You can kind of see here where I put 3 or 4 dots in the same kind of fashion. And I think I went back and kind of fixed that because that didn't really look realistic. You kind of just want to make it sporadic. And we're going to go ahead and here and kind of just putting some rust on the hinges where you'd have exposed metal and they'd be rusting. Some rusting on the bottom of the car and whatnot. So really this is where your car starts to look really good. We also have some rusting on the outside of the bracing, and we're just kind of really going off the prototype photos, and there's not really a whole lot to say. This is really more of a trial and error type thing. Kind of, I'll put a blotch of paint here, and then have it dry, and then we'll put some powders over it, kind of blend it in, and see how it does. And then if you don't like it, since it's water-based acrylic paints, you can always just take a wet Q-tip and remove it, and try again. So yeah, I don't have too much else to say on that. We're kind of just doing some random splotching. Another aspect of this is you actually want to remove kind of the fade you did on certain spots to make it seem lighter in the spots where you want it lighter, I should say. That was probably a terrible way of explaining it, but oh well. So you can see on the bracing here, if you remember back to that prototype photo, the bracing was pretty light compared to the rest of the fading in between the bracing. So that's what I'm trying to replicate here. Is I just took a wet Q-tip and I'm actually just removing the fade. I broke it in half. I'm using the stiffer inner part, and I'm just kind of wiping it away. And you can kind of see whenever you do this, you completely go back to your bare finish. So if it's something you don't really want, you might want to consider using like a clear coat if you want to protect that fade, or if you have multiple fades, you might want to do like a clear coat between your fades, kind of just so it'll be a little bit more difficult to revert back to the original finish. Another aspect that we're going to be doing in this is using that lemonade I talked about in the last clip, and we're just going to be doing some patch outs where the car manufacturer or the car repair either patched out the load limits or they patched out other stuff. So I think in this one they did patch out the load limits, and then they re-stenciled it, but at this time I don't have stencils, and that's really a small feature to kind of look at. So when you're just kind of looking at the car, the patch out really says enough. So another small patch out is a blue box on that last bracing on the left side, and it's just something a little You can see here it's a Bluebell 909 full cart, so that's another super old paint, and we're just using that to patch out. I think that's either maybe like an industry used it or whatnot, but you know, that's just something, gives the car a little bit of character. But other than that, it's a pretty clean car, not a whole lot of scratches, not a lot of patch outs. Overall, looks pretty good. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and use the powders now to kind of take all those harsh scratches and scrapes and acrylic painting we did on the car and kind of smooth them out. So we're going to be using those AIM weathering products again. We got the light rust, we got the dark rust, we got the dark earth, and the medium earth. So those are the four pretty classic colors. I think the other ones aren't nearly as good, but these four are pretty good. You can kind of use them for anything. So the areas we're really going to be focused on is that roof line, the door hinge, the door rail guides, kind of everywhere. I'm just showing you with the paintbrush right now. And really all we're doing is we took those blotches and we're just kind of smooth them out. And you can really do this pretty well with the powders. Kind of see here, I'm just kind of throwing it on, kind of blotch it on and then smooth it out. And that's just something you'll have to practice with. It's kind of difficult to kind of explain in person, and I just use an old toothbrush, an old paintbrush for this. I know some people like those makeup sponges, and that's pretty good, but it's difficult to use in a precise area. And then right here, we're just going ahead and we're taking off some of the weathering with the Q-tip. And it's the good thing with these powders, if you don't like something, you can just kind of wet it and remove anything you don't like. Some other things I would just kind of mention in this, you can also use it to, if you see here, I did some of the graffiti a little bit beforehand. That's because I didn't want all the graffiti to kind of be like a nice perfect black. So now it's kind of rusty, or not rusty, but grimy. That really adds, and it shows age. It shows, this graffiti was here before that, and this graffiti was here after. But we're kind of just going through and smoothing everything out, making it look good. But this is definitely something you just have to practice and get better with, and then in the end you'll kind of see me just scrape off all the excess powder I didn't use, and that's because if you throw the clear coat on there with the powder, like a lot of powder in one spot, it'll kind of get like a speckled effect, and it just won't look good. It'll almost look like a reptile skin or something. But other than that, it's a pretty easy car. You're just kind of smoothing it out overall. But we'll go ahead and move on to roof weathering next. Alright, so the next major component we're going to be working on is the roof of the car. If you can remember back to that prototype photo that we pointed out, we're looking for a nice even coat of that rusty brownish, and then we're going to go ahead and fill the gaps with that silverish gray color. Kind of make it look like certain areas have been rusted and other spots haven't. So right here, we're just going ahead and masking off the car body away from the roof. Nothing too special, just making sure that when we do paint the roof, nothing gets sprayed onto all that hard work we just did. So right here, we're using that Model Master Acrylic Burnt Sienna. It's a really nice color. It's very similar to their rust color, but I find that the burnt sienna is sometimes a little bit cheaper, so I just buy that in bulk, and it does the job. So we are just using this as a base color, and then we're going to go over it and then use some weathering powders to kind of make it what we want. So right here, we're just kind of getting a nice base color, making sure that metallic silver roof is kind of showing through. So you can see me using the hairdryer in some cases, and that's just because my burnt sienna did start to clog up a little bit, so I had to thin it down, and it was a little bit too thin for me. So right here you can see we're using the AIM powdering, and we're using that medium brown. You can actually see where I was testing it out and just making sure it worked. But there's nothing too special to this either. We're just going to take a Q-tip here, and we're just going to go ahead and wipe it, and we're just going to kind of blotch it on the roof, and then we're going to wipe away the excess. And then once you got it all covered, you're just kind of wiping it away. You're not really leaving any of that burnt sienna color we did. And you'll see it's a pretty dusty brown. But when we go ahead and clear coat this, it's going to turn dark. You can almost see on that last panel how it's a little bit darker than the others. And that's going to be the color we're going to be looking for. And that's really one thing you got to watch out for when you're using these powders is that whenever you clear coat something, the whole color scheme of all the powders kind of change, and that's something you really got to watch out for. And that's something I'm actually taking into account here, is I'm using the light brown instead of the dark brown, because I know when I do the clear coat over the top, we will lose that lighter brown, and we'll actually get the darker brown we are looking for. Alright, so we went ahead and we just did the clear coat, and we're going to go ahead and now put that that packing material over the top. Kind of seals in the ribs on the side and over on the edges of the car. So we're using that Tamiya XF19 Sky Gray, and this part really doesn't matter. This is just a gray that I thought looked pretty close to the prototype. It was a nice flat color, and it was I just had it in my box. So you're not looking for anything specific here. You're just kind of looking for something that'll fit the prototype. If you have a prototype that may have just had its roof redone and it's still pretty shiny, you might want to go with a metallic paint. But I really enjoy the Sky Gray. It looked good, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So if we kind of take a look at the prototype, there are some major areas where this material is used at. And I'm not sure if it's kind of like where the paint isn't chipping or where it's not rusting, or if it has a protective side. But you can kind of see we're just going along the side here, and we're not making a perfectly straight line, because that's not exactly how they do it. They just kind of slop it on there, I think, and that's really what we're trying to simulate. We're not trying to get on those raised ridges. We're just trying to get right up next to it. We're trying to stay pretty consistently along that line, and we're just trying to, make it look pretty good. So not much here that requires a lot of work or thought, but overall I think this effect really brings the car to life, because it's something on the weathering. When you're going through a weathered box car, you're looking at a train, you really don't see the roof until you kind of see it from a bridge, and then when you see it, like, using this technique, you're like, I don't really usually see that, but that, I know it looks just like that, and it looks pretty good. So so we went ahead and we just finished up all these side bridges. We're finishing up right now, and the next thing we're going to be doing is that the rusting on the roof isn't 100% perfect. I'm pretty sure the Sky Gray is the under material and the rusting is the top side of the roof. And you actually get some of that roofing that's kind of scraped away, I believe, and then you get some speckles, for lack of a better word, in the rusting of just this Sky Gray. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do right here. Nothing too particular. I'm just kind of, splotching it around. Nothing too crazy. Just 1 or 2 dabs per roofing panel, and then moving on. If you overdo it, it doesn't look as good. And if you underdo it, it kind of looks like it's missing something. So once again, nothing too crazy. Just another easy technique that really adds to the realism of the car.